Hello, friends. I'm Kathy Fay, Executive Director of the Boston Early Music Festival, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this pre-concert talk preparatory to the upcoming performance on our 24-25 concert season featuring AGAVE with countertenor Reginald Mobley on Friday, February 14th at 8 p.m. at First Church Cambridge Congregational in Harvard Square. Before I introduce my guests, rising star and multiple Grammy nominee countertenor Reginald Mobley and AGAVE co-director and keyboard player Henry Lebedinsky, let me just say that all of us at BEMF are thrilled to be presenting this highly anticipated Boston debut. Reggie, this BEMF performance marks the 10-year anniversary since your first appearance on the BEMF concert stage. BEMF friends and fans will recall your memorable performance of a selection of Monteverdi madrigals with the BEMF vocal and chamber ensembles back in October of 2014. And Henry, once a Boston resident and major presence in the local early music scene here, we've missed you since you moved to the West Coast. We're so honored by your willingness to share your insights about this fascinating program titled Rum and Rebellion, an exploration through music of the complex and contradictory intersection of revolution, the rum industry, and the transatlantic slave trade in Europe, South America, and the Caribbean. My sincere thanks to both of you. Tickets for our performance by AGAVE are still available and can be purchased online by visiting the BEMF website at bemf.org or by calling the BEMF office at 617-661-1812. For those unable to attend our in-person performance on Friday, February 14th, virtual tickets are on sale as well. Our virtual presentation premieres on Friday, February 28th at 8 p.m. and will be available for a 2-week period from February 28th through March 14th, 2025. I should mention that if you're interested in learning more about this performance, you'll find wonderful program notes and the full concert program also on our website, bemf.org. Finally, my heartfelt thanks to Donald Vaughn and Lee Ridgway for their leadership support of countertenor Reginald Mobley, and to George Hardman for his support of our virtual presentation by AGAVE with Reggie. All of us at BEMF are grateful to Donald and Lee and George, as well as our many friends and fans around the world who attend and support our in-person and virtual performances. If you'd like to learn more about our concert sponsorships, again, please visit our website at bemf.org. And now I will disappear from the screen, turn the microphone over to our two guests. But before I go, thanks again, Reggie and Henry, and my thanks to all of you for watching this pre-concert talk. I look forward to seeing you at the concert on Friday, February 14th.
Thank you, Kathy, and thank you to the Boston Early Music Festival for having us today. I think this is just a really interesting moment and a really interesting time to be producing this program. I think we're in a moment in time where this discussion needs to happen, this artistic discussion and this opportunity for us to look at some bringing up. And I have to say, there's so much in this program, this idea of rum and rebellion, that I think is so pertinent and so important to the discussions we're having today as a nation and as a people. This music comes from really what Tom Standage called the first era of globalization. That's the period from roughly the beginning of the 16th century to the beginning of the 19th century, where the world was really finding its footing as a global trade, globally trade and economic power that really relied on contributions from all over the globe instead of these really constrained population centers. And more than anything else, by the 17th century, rum was currency in this era of globalization. It was quickly discovered that you could not grow sugar cane without incredibly cheap labor and The Arabs of Andalusia, of Spain, really discovered that the best way to do that was just to use slave labor so you didn't have to pay anybody at all. So it's just a lovely innovation they had. And by the early 16th century, the Portuguese and the Spanish were running plantations in the Azores, in Madeira, and the Canary Islands. And that quickly spread to the New World, to both North and South America. And this would not have been made possible without the invention of rum at the beginning of the 17th century, because rum became the currency. Rum was used to pay slavers to kidnap and capture African slaves. Rum was paid to the sailors who transported the slaves to the New World. Rum was given to the slaves themselves that they could use to exchange for food and to drink. And ultimately, you have this incredible liquid currency that spanned the globe. And everything that we're doing in this program really traces those routes. And this incredibly complicated and incredibly unjust economic system that really has legacy that is felt today in across the globe and certainly in the United States. And it's just so wonderful to be able to do this program with you. I mean, this is what was it, 2008?
That was around 2008, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah. So 2008, Reggie and I put together a program of 200 years, more than 200 years of music by Black composers. And this was some research that I'd been doing the decade previous, and it was just so much fun to be able to explore all of these just amazing composers, this just gorgeous, beautiful, powerful music. And it was really that was the genesis of the root of not only this program that we're offering, the Boston Early Music Festival, but Agave's American Originals program that we recorded with Reggie in 2001, that got us a Grammy nomination. And that program was really exploring this whole idea of Central America, South America, North America, these composers, most of whom were people of color, that really grew out of this cultural mixing of indigenous African European cultures that developed into what we think of today as American music.
Right.
So we really couldn't have done that without that foundation. So
And of course, because we didn't even realize that rum was kind of the backdrop of everything that we've been doing for all this time, for now almost decades at this point.
Mhm.
But it also, I mean, it really does stretch to every corner of the slave triangle. So it includes England as well.
Mhm.
Everywhere where rum and the slave trade kind of rested, there was music. There were enslaved peoples, our free blacks, who were creating and making incredible music that not only added to kind of the landscape of what art was, especially performing arts would have been in these places, but in these in the same way that folk music and spirituals and other forms kind of held story traditions of cultures. It came to to Western classical music that through the minds, through the souls and minds of people of color who happen to exist in these spheres, they also use this medium to keep these stories and keep these traditions alive. I mean, as we go through these occasional times where education or certain facts and certain bits of history are either erased or hidden or redacted, it's always music that continues stories and traditions and truths that kind of link us to the truth, to the reality of who we are, not just people of color, but just people in general of the human race. It's always at the end of everything. That's kind of what music does. That it's service, whereas it's a kind of a gatekeeper of these things, and so it seems almost natural to use music to kind of trace the footprint of rum and its effects throughout the Americas and Europe and Africa as well.
Yeah, I really need to shout out special thanks to Jean-Bernard Serrin and his Lisette project, who introduced me to this amazing poem called Lisette Tokitaten, which is a poem in Haitian Creole, and this incredible journey that this poem has had from Haiti all the way to Europe and to America. And JB has really done some incredible research on the different composers who set this poem, which tells the story of a plantation, of an enslaved person on a plantation lamenting the fact that his beloved is being sent away to work on another plantation, and this this powerful this message of separation, this message of lives out of control, really, I think a common thread here. I mean, these narratives of just of being taken away from your homes, being forced to leave your countries. I mean, it's very powerful music, and at the same time, it's music of hope. It's music of love and heartbreak. And I think one of the most interesting pieces of this is just how interconnected all of these worlds are. Um, Not only telling stories, but also being the keepers of. I mean, there's a Hawaiian word I can't get away from. It's kuleana, which means responsibility. But so much more than that. I feel like it's our responsibility as musicians to be the tellers of these stories, to carry them forward, and to be able to not only share them with audiences like we're doing here at the Boston Early Music Festival, but also to be able to say to other musicians and other people who appreciate this music, this is the tip of the iceberg. This is the door. We're opening the door. You can also walk through this. You can also go on your own journeys of discovery, find out more about the people behind this music, find out more about the composers, listen, learn, and teach other people as well about these stories and how important this is, how crucial these composers and this music are to appreciating world history, appreciating American history, and being connected to those contexts. When we have that knowledge, when we have that knowledge of where we have been, that's what gives us that responsibility of to say, we need to teach this to other people. That way, this will not happen again. I mean, I think I'd love to talk a little bit about Ignatius Sancho, because what an amazing figure. I mean, his role in all of this was as a person born into slavery who eventually got his freedom. He became a merchant, an abolitionist, a writer, a composer, an actor, a Shakespearean. He just absolutely loved Shakespeare and was connected with some of the leading minds of his time. His day job was as a merchant. What did he sell? Rum from the West Indies. You just can't in this world, you just cannot escape those connections. They're so complicated.
Absolutely not. And it's so funny. Well, ironic, but I mean, as a Southerner, I'm quite fond of the idea of the Bourbon Trail, of following all the distilleries in Kentucky, and here we have our good friend Charles, who in a way actually he followed the rum trail. I mean, here he is coming from Africa, born on a slave ship. To the New World, to New Granada, which is now basically Colombia, and then being taken, an orphaned, 2-year-old, taken to England and sold to three sisters in Greenwich. He really existed on all the major spots of the triangle. And then at his end point, he truly became something special. Which he's indicative of the potential of all the millions of people who were traded and sold. And honestly, I kind of lament a little of what we've lost because of that. But to think of someone like Sancho, who, exactly, he, just the Duke of Montagu discovered him. Eventually when he fled, the home of the sisters, and took refuge, and was hired by the widow Montagu, and then by their son-in-law, who was the governor of Windsor Castle, and him being apparently close to the royal family, and then in 1769, when he published his book of songs, it happened to be the same year that David Garrick, famous Shakespearean, had a festival in Stratford-on-Avon.
That was the 200th anniversary of the birth of Shakespeare.
Yes, and there was a huge structure, basically like a pavilion, that was created in Stratford to celebrate this. And initially, Garrick was very good friends with Thomas Arne, who wrote an ode based on these words, these texts that Garrick provided to commemorate the building of this structure. But they had a falling out, and at some point he gave these texts, snatched them from Arne and gave them to his friend Ignatius. And and from there we get several of his most beautiful songs, the six that we have that are existing now. We won't be performing any of the Shakespearean songs, the Shakespearean influenced songs, but we will be doing a very interesting anacreontic ode, which I don't want to get too much into the Anacreon Society in London at that time, but there's a lot of debauchery, and I'm still trying to find out if there are any links to him being a part. Um,
I don't know, and I have yet to find the source of the particular translation that Sancho used for this translation of the 13th Anacreontic Ode. The irony being, it was another one of these Anacreontic texts, the tune of which has become famous as the Star Spangled Banner.
right.
So yeah, we have all these connections to England, America,
And
and booze.
and booze. And of course, Sancho loved booze. And, he definitely sold it along with tobacco and chocolates, all with, again, like you said, illustrations.
Yes, of enslaved people growing sugar cane and cocoa. It's yeah, the irony is deep and rich here.
It's all there. And of course, and of course, he was a staunch royalist for a very long time until sometime during the American Revolution, his good friend James Charles Fox, the politician who was kind of responsible for pushing for the banning of the slave trade in London and England, um, kind of turned him on to the actual plight of what was going on in America, and how he had a personal connection to a certain set of peoples who were there in the middle of all of this. And honestly, it's so funny because this incredible figure was known to the likes of Thomas Jefferson, who commented on how impressive this man was, which
And he was also he corresponded extensively, and I highly recommend to anyone who hears this to read the letters of Sancho. They're published. You can get them in a little paperback book here, but it's amazing. He wrote to Equiano, another African abolitionist, and to make so many of the white abolitionists of the time as well. Just his thoughts on slavery and coming from his point of view are very, very powerful, and just it's funny how he was both the subject and the object. Because, he was held up as an example of the fact that black, radical idea at the time that black people were actually human, which was one of these justifications for the slave trade, because black people were considered to be only 3/5 of a human being at the time, and so Sancho was held up as an example of, hey, black people are actually people, radical, right? But at the same time, so he could so elegantly argue for the cause of abolition. It's worth reading his own words.
Definitely. Particularly there are letters exchanges between him and the author Lawrence Sterne, the author of Tristram Shandy, where he really does lay out the case in such a manner that it's just you can't help but be swept up by
The wit just flies off the page. I mean, this is one of the top 5 people I want to meet. If that's ever, the guy could talk circles and run circles around any of the best minds of his time.
Absolutely. And of course, he had a parallel in France, as we spoke about, saying that Jefferson knew of Sancho. John Adams knew of a different figure in France, of Joseph Boulogne, Chevalier de Saint George.
Yeah, and his connection to rum was really in the family, because his father was a white plantation owner on Guadeloupe. What did he grow? Sugarcane for rum. And his mother was an enslaved maid from that plantation. And Saint George was Chevalier de Saint George, inherited the title from his father, and he was educated in the best schools, composer and a conductor and an incredibly talented violinist, but one of the finest fencers of his age. I mean, this guy was a truly incredible figure. And we're very fortunate to have as much information as we do about him, not just his compositions, but just so much information about his life. And just really a leading figure in Paris. I mean, his life straddled toward the end of his life, right? He was affected by in Saint-Domingue, as it was known at the time. He traveled there toward the end of his life and was just deeply disillusioned by what he saw there. I think it really contributed to his early death. It's everything that happened at that time.
Yeah.
So many wonderful lives, and I think this is one of the joys of what we do as musicians, is to be able to be storytellers, not just on the stage, but behind the scenes as well. And as researchers to be able to go, I mean, Reggie, you traveled to London and you held the Sancho prints. It's just,
Absolutely.
it's wonderful to be able to have that direct connection to these people that were.
And you see how wide it was. I mean, it's not just, traveling to London or Cambridge and seeing these things, but also seeing the effects of what led to him being there
Mhm.
all over the United Kingdom. Not just in England, but I particularly think of Wales as well. There is a particular castle in Bangor called Penrhyn family, and they owned not just one of the largest, but they own two massive sugar plantations in the West Indies. And they, at the time of the abolition of slavery in England, they basically they possessed the largest population of slaves at that point. And it's just amazing seeing now, not just knowing that this happened then, but seeing in this moment, seeing in real time in the 21st century, these incredible structures, these manors and castles and gardens that were all built. These walls were built by sugarcane and slate and things like that. And none of these concerts that we do, these performances, the research that we do, isn't just about saying, look at what happened then. Isn't this neat? Look at how they dug themselves out of these horrible conditions. Isn't that just a great, impressive story? No, yes, but it's also about linking then to now. And I think that's where this music is more than entertainment. It's also practical, it's also a service. It's to remind us of how we exist in our own world in the same way that they that did then. I mean, we can cast aspersions on Handel's potential investments in the slave trade and and the goods that Sancho sold in his shop. But but listening to this music, like how do we bring that to now? Do we think about perhaps like what our phones were made of and where they came from, thinking about our investments and our bank accounts and things like that. So it's also a chance to kind of say that for as crazy, as the way things were then, like how much different are we now? And so it's a chance to not just celebrate and enjoy the music of these incredible people, but also to think about the fact that those people and people like them and their descendants, they all still exist now, and not just them, but us. And how do we keep from repeating those same mistakes of the past? Um, but through at this particular moment through the setting of Rome. And certainly Boston is not safe from this as well. I mean, we're only maybe two weeks removed from the date when 2.3 million gallons of molasses flooded the north end of Boston, which was there for a particular reason. So it's something that we should realize that we're a part of this story too, as Bostonians, and as we're a part of the story, we are also responsible. We also have onus. We also have a stake in this story and how it exists now and where we go from there.
Yeah, I think that's certainly true as just I think as being a modern exponent of historical music. I always think about that myself. Why are we doing this? Why do we cling to the music of the past? Why do we still celebrate it? And the big parallel is why do we still go experience Shakespeare's plays, right? The true great artists are the ones that can capture the human condition in their art and teach us something about what it means to be ourselves as human beings living today. And that doesn't matter whether the music were written 5 years ago, 5 minutes ago, or 300 years ago. As musicians, when we take that music and we present it to you, we need to be able to offer you the context as well. Say this is not some abstract music that pleasures the spirit or makes us feel love lost or something like that. This was music written by real people experiencing real events in their lives that sometimes we don't have the knowledge about the context to truly understand that. So we present a program like this. It's not simply a recasting of a piece that was performed 400, 300, 200 years ago, but to try to say, we are giving you really a curated playlist of music from the context of this intersection of economics and globalization and the slave trade and the cultural and artistic trends that were happening at the time. We're trying to bring you into this whole experience from a contextual point of view. We're asking your indulgence, and we're going to give you the tools. We're going to give you the translations of these texts and the program notes to enter into this experience as much as possible. But hopefully, what the best thing we can hope for is that you come away from this experience looking to learn more about these contexts, looking to learn more about the current effects of the events that took place 200, 300 years ago, how they've shaped our world, how they continue to shape our world, and how they can really teach us about what we need to do to be aware of the things that are going on around us and how we can use our resources and our voices to change the world for the better. I think that's really what this is all about.
Yeah.
So, well, thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for inviting us to speak to you. And again, we're really looking forward to performing on the Boston Early Music Festival. And thank you to Kathy and thank you to the entire team for making this possible.
Thank you.